Hey there, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to program a chart button class in MQL4 that will be able to create buttons on the chart, and these buttons will behave just like a chart object, so they will have time and price coordinates instead of using x and y coordinates, just like an arrow, for example. Let's get started. So first what we need to do is to create a file, an include file, in which we can write our class, and we want to include the button.mqh file first, because it's an already written file and it has many useful functions and properties which can be used when writing this our own class. And we want, of course, public inheritance. You almost always use public inheritance when writing classes. So now we need to create the member variables which will store our time and price coordinates. I'm going to call them time left, time right, and price top and price bottom. So these are the variables which will store our coordinates, and then I'm going to write a function which is a create function. With this function are we going to actually create our object on the chart. So we need to pass in some arguments. For example, the name. We actually need to pass in the chart ID most of the time, so that will be the first argument that we pass in, and then name, and then the coordinates which are needed to create this object, of course. Remember, when creating a button, you always use x and y coordinates. So in this function we need to change these time and price coordinates to x and y coordinates. But first what we need to do is we need to save these input variables in our member variables. You can see that actually I did a mistake when giving the name of these arguments, because they are the same as our member variables, so we have to change that. And there is a great function, built-in function, that can change the time and price coordinates to x and y coordinates, and we need these x and y coordinates in order to create our actual button on the chart. And this function is the chart time price to xy, as you can see. And here we actually need to pass the x and y as reference in this function, so it will actually write the values in these variables, which I have called x1, x2, and y1 and y2. So now that we have the right x and y coordinates, we can finally call the cbutton create a function in order to create the physical button. Here you can see the create function of the button class. We have to just pass it the right arguments, and then it should work fine. So now when we try to compile, you can see that this include file doesn't exist, and we have forgotten the semicolon at the end of the class. Now when we compile, we can see that it works, and now here I have created a chart button test.mq4 file. We have to include our include file, and with this file we can test out whether our class is working or not. So here you can create a dynamic my button object, and I call the create function of this object with the right parameters, You can see here you can choose out of 3 options, and now we're going to choose the option we have written. We can see that the arguments are a little bit different than what we have first thought, but it should work. And don't forget to write the delete my button in the init function. Now you can see that it's not working, but it's not working because in our create function we have passed in an integer as a chart ID, where actually it is a long parameter. So yeah, now you can see that it works just fine. Now it's time to write the function which we are going to call on every chart event. I'm going to call this onChart event because it's a very logical name. I'm going to pass all of the parameters on every on every chart event. So an ID, a long parameter, a double parameter, and a string parameter. So what we want to do first is we want to make sure that whenever we are scrolling or we are changing the chart, the button stays on the same time and price parameters as before. So whenever a chart event chart change occurs, we have to move this object, but we have to write the move function for ourselves. We want to create a function that is going to move the button base, and it is going to have 2 arguments, left time and the top price. So let's write this function. Obviously we want to use the already written move function, which can be seen here in the vnd.mqh file, window.mqh file. So now we want to use the cvnd move function at the end of our function, but first we have to convert the time and price to x and y coordinates. And we can do this by using a built-in function called chart time price to xy. We want to call this move function in the onChart event function whenever a chart event chart change, so a scroll occurs. We have to call this onChart event function we have just written at every chart event whenever our button was created. It's important to check first whether or not it's a null pointer. So now we want to try to compile it and run it. We see that there are some errors. Why is that? For example, we don't have to return everything. Well, we have a void function, and we didn't write the move function well. We have to first write chart button. And as you can see, it works just fine. So now what we want to do is to make it possible for us to drag these buttons on the chart. So we have to first write another move function with an x and a y coordinate this time. So we have to override this move function, and we want to overwrite it because we want to save the time and price coordinates whenever we are moving this object. So now again we are using chart xy to time price, and after moving the objects there are some built-in functions: left, top, bottom and right. These are the functions that give back the coordinates of the actual button after moving it. So these coordinates have to be converted to our time and price member variables. After we did that, we want to now create a function that has a return value of a boolean, and we want to check whether the mouse in the area of the button is. We want to return to true when the x is bigger than the left coordinate but less than the right coordinate, and the y is less than bottom and more than the top. And now what we want to do is we want to write a function that can handle every time we click our button. And this function I'm going to call on mouse down, and we actually have to add a new member variable which will give us whether or not we have selected the current chart button. And we have to write a on mouse up event as well for the deselection of the button. So these are the functions that we're going to call in the onChart event function. The criteria of calling these are that we can catch a charted mouse move and we see that the mouse is in the button, and this you can see whether with calling the mouse in button function and passing long parameter and double parameter as an argument, because every time a chart and mouse move occurs, the long parameter and the double parameter are going to have the informations about the x and the y position of the mouse, and the string parameter has to be 1 if the left mouse button is clicked. And whenever we see a charting mouse move and the left button is not clicked, we have to call on mouse up. Now we want to write these functions. First, every time we call on mouse down, we have to set selected to true. And we have to set. We also want to press the button, and in the on mouse up function we want to do the opposite. And now when we want to try to compile, it gives us some errors. For example, we have to make our move functions to to have a return value of a boolean because it is a virtual function in the CV and the include file, and since it has a boolean return value, we have to give our functions a boolean return value as well. And the same is true with our onMouse down and onMouse up functions. There are some errors in our move function because we want to give a integer. We want to pass an integer as a reference. We can simply say that we want to pass null as reference because that is not allowed. Now we can see that it does not work, and the reason why it doesn't work is that we haven't allowed the mouse move as a chart event. So first we have to do that. We can do that by using the chart set integer function. We want to set the chart and mouse move to be a chart event. Now, as you can see, whenever we click it, it's going to turn gray, and we can see that we have clicked our object. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to drag our object. We want to write a drag function. Now, this drag function will enable us to drag our object on the chart. But first we want to define some other member variables, for example mouse x and mouse y. These are going to these values are going to store the position of our mouse whenever it is in our object and our object is selected. So now we want to overwrite our onMouse down function with the x and y coordinates of the mouse, so that we can set the mouse x to the left minus the x coordinate of the, or no, actually the x minus the left coordinate of the button. Same is true for the y. So now we store these values whenever we click the object. And now we want to call drag function with the x and y coordinates. These are going to be the real coordinates of the mouse, and we can access the member variables mouse x and mouse y in this function, and we want to move this chart button to the right position. In order to do that, we want to move it to x minus mouse x and y minus mouse y. And this should work for us. But as you see, there are two problems with this. One, we scroll through the chart whenever we drag it, so we have to set the chart mouse scroll to false. We can do this by calling the chart set integer function. And second, we saw that whenever we drag the object, our mouse actually moves in the object, so that we have to change as well. You see, whenever I drag it to the right side, it is not working well. So we have to change the criteria of calling the onMouse down. We want to only call it on mouse down whenever it is not yet selected. And now it should work fine. That's for today's video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.